The house was quiet in a way that felt negotiated, not peaceful, managed. I sat on the edge of the bed and watched my husband fold shirts with careful hands, as if balance itself might break if he moved too fast. He didn't look at me. That was the most honest thing he'd done all night. "I'm staying at your sister's," he said, like it was a logistics update. I didn't ask why. I didn't ask since when. I asked the only question that still mattered. "Did you ever think about telling me the truth?" He stopped, just for a second. Long enough. "You know," he said, already halfway to the excuse, "I just wanted everyone to be okay." Everyone, not me. He left an hour later. 20 minutes after that, my sister texted, "I know this is hard. If you need me, I'm here. Here." She was always here. Too here. On the kitchen table sat the mug she'd given us when we moved in. I never used it. Somehow, it was always clean. I picked it up and understood something I'd been avoiding for a long time. The worst part hadn't just happened. It had already happened. Quietly, carefully, with my consent. But to understand how I let this happen, you have to go back to the first time I told myself, it's nothing, as long as everyone is okay. Before anything broke, our life looked stable from the outside. That was always my job, making things look stable. I was the older sister, the one who handled details, appointments, birthdays, emergencies. I learned early that calm was a form of currency, and I spent it freely. If I smoothed things over fast enough, no one had to sit with discomfort. No one had to explain themselves. My husband liked that about me, or at least he liked what it allowed him to avoid. We met when my sister was still in college, drifting between majors, between moods. She stayed with us temporarily after a bad breakup. One suitcase. No plan. I didn't ask how long she'd stay. I never did. She needed space, and I had plenty. At first, it felt harmless. She slept late. I left early. He worked from home. They developed routines that didn't include me. Coffee at odd hours, shared errands, inside jokes I'd walk into mid-laugh. When I noticed, I told myself it was good, healthy. He was helping her. She needed grounding. I was proud of him for being patient. That was the first lie I told myself. The second came when she started speaking for him. He didn't mean it that way. He's just stressed. He doesn't want conflict, you know how he is. She said these things casually, like observations, like facts anyone could see. I remember feeling a flicker of irritation, then something worse, relief. If she understood him, I didn't have to push. If she translated his silences, I could stay quiet. Peace, I learned, could be outsourced. The phrase started showing up around then. Always softly, always reasonable. "You know, I just want everyone to be okay." He said it first, when I asked why he hadn't come to bed. She said it later, when I asked why she'd canceled her plans again. Same words, same rhythm. I noticed. I did nothing. Because the house stayed calm. Because no one was yelling. Because nothing had been proven. And because a part of me believed that as long as everyone was okay, I was doing my job. That was the version of my life before the silence turned strategic. Before I understood that stability can be engineered, and that someone was slowly removing me from the design. The first time I almost said something, it was over nothing. A dinner reservation. I'd booked a small place near the river. Our place. The kind of restaurant that didn't rush you, where the lights were low enough to hide fatigue. He texted an hour before we were supposed to leave. Something came up. Rain check? I stared at the screen longer than necessary, waiting for the familiar follow-up. The explanation. It didn't come. When he got home later, he smelled like soap that wasn't ours. I didn't accuse him. I didn't even ask where he'd been. I asked a safer question. "Did you eat?" He hesitated, just a beat. "Yeah," he said. "Your sister made pasta. We talked for a while. She's not doing great." There it was, the justification, neatly packaged. I nodded, smiled, told him it was good she had someone. I meant it, at least I thought I did. That night, lying next to him, I counted his breaths like I used to when things felt off. He fell asleep easily. I didn't. The next morning, my sister was already up when I came into the kitchen. She was wearing my sweater, the soft one, the one I only wore at home. "Oh, sorry," she said quickly. I was cold. She didn't take it off. We stood there for a second too long, 3 people in a space built for 2. My husband reached past me to grab a mug, the clean one on the counter, and filled it without looking. "You know," he said lightly, "I was thinking maybe we should all reset a bit. Less tension." I laughed, because that was expected of me. "What tension?" I asked. He exchanged a glance with my sister. It was fast, efficient, like a signal. "I just want everyone to be okay," he said. She nodded. "Yeah, me too." That was the moment. Not when I found a message, not when I noticed the late nights, but when I realized they were already aligned, and I was the variable. Later that day, I checked the calendar on our shared laptop. He'd started color-coding events. Mine were blue, hers were green, his were neutral. There were dinners I didn't remember planning, walks I wasn't invited to, a weekend marked busy that I'd thought was empty. I closed the laptop and sat very still. Because once you see the structure, you can't unsee it. And because something irreversible had happened, I wasn't just being excluded anymore. I was being managed. After that morning, I started paying attention to the quiet rules. The house had them. Unspoken adjustments that made everything smoother. For them. My sister stopped asking before borrowing things. My husband stopped explaining where he'd been. Conversations shifted when I entered the room, not abruptly, just enough to remind me I was late to something already in progress. I told myself I was imagining it. That was easier than accepting the alternative. One evening, I came home early. No warning, no text. The kind of arrival that used to feel intimate. They were on the couch, not touching, not doing anything you could point to. She was barefoot, knees tucked under her, his laptop balanced between them. They looked up at the same time, startled in perfect sync. "Hey," he said too quickly. "Oh, hi," she added, smiling a second later. I stood there, keys still in my hand, watching them reset themselves. "What are you working on?" I asked. He hesitated. She answered. "Just helping him organize some things. You know how he gets overwhelmed." I did know. Or I thought I did. But something in the way she said helping felt proprietary. He closed the laptop without a word. That night I asked him, carefully, if we were okay. He sighed, the long-suffering sound of a reasonable man burdened by unnecessary emotion. "Why wouldn't we be?" "I don't know," I said. "You feel distant." He leaned back against the counter, arms crossed, defensive posture disguised as calm. "You're reading too much into things," he said. "She's going through a lot. I'm just trying to keep things stable." There it was again, stability, as if it were a shared project I'd somehow abandoned. "I just want everyone to be okay," he added. Later, my sister knocked on our bedroom door. "I hope I didn't make things weird," she said softly. "I'd never want to come between you two." She didn't wait for me to answer. Instead, she placed a hand briefly on my arm, a gesture that looked like comfort, but felt like confirmation. "You know," she said, almost kindly. He really needs peace right now. After she left, I sat on the edge of the bed and realized something that made my stomach drop. Every concern I raised was being reframed as a threat to harmony. Every question was treated like an attack, and slowly, expertly, I was being trained to stay quiet. Because in this house, peace wasn't the absence of conflict. It was the absence of me. The shift happened quietly, the way rot does. I stopped asking questions because I already knew the answers I'd get. He stopped checking in because he didn't have to. And my sister perfected the art of being indispensable. She learned his schedules better than I had. Knew when he needed quiet, when he needed reassurance, when he needed someone to tell him he wasn't wrong. She filled the gaps I'd been too tired to notice forming. I started finding small changes that didn't belong to me. The pantry reorganized. My side of the closet compressed. My toothbrush moved an inch to the left. Nothing overt, nothing you could accuse. One night, I reached for the mug I always avoided, the clean one, and found a faint lipstick mark on the rim. Not fresh. Careful. Almost erased. I washed it twice. Later, in bed, I asked him if he still wanted this. Us. He turned toward me with practiced patience. Why are you making this into something it isn't? I stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks I'd memorized years ago. I just feel like I'm not included anymore. He exhaled slowly, as if choosing restraint. You're included, he said. You're just intense lately. Intense. The word they use when you notice patterns. The next morning, my sister waited until he left for a call. You're not wrong, she said, suddenly serious. But pushing him will only make things worse. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized she wasn't nervous. She was confident. He listens to you, I said. She didn't deny it. I just want everyone to be okay, she replied gently. The same phrase, the same cadence. That afternoon, I checked our shared account. Nothing alarming, just movement. Small expenses categorized as household. Meals I hadn't eaten, groceries I hadn't seen. I told myself it was normal. That night, I heard them laughing in the kitchen after I'd gone to bed. Not loud, intimate. The kind of laughter that assumes no audience. I lay there, awake, understanding something too late. They weren't hiding, they were replacing. And the space I was losing wasn't emotional anymore. It was structural. The first time I realized I had become a problem to be solved, it was during a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. I was in the hallway, half hidden by the door frame, looking for my phone charger. They were in the kitchen, voices low, precise, not conspiratorial, efficient. She's noticing more, my sister said. He didn't argue. That was what scared me. I know, he replied. She's exhausted. That's part of it. Exhausted, as if awareness were a symptom. We can't let this turn into a fight, she continued. That wouldn't be good for anyone. For anyone, he echoed. There was a pause. I imagined them exchanging that look again, the one I never seemed to catch in time. I just want everyone to be okay, he said. I stepped back before they could see me, my heart beating too fast for how still I was standing. Something settled in my chest then, heavy and irreversible. They weren't reacting to my feelings. They were planning around them. That evening, he suggested therapy. Not we should try therapy, I should. You've been under a lot of stress, he said gently, like a verdict wrapped in concern. It might help to talk to someone neutral. My sister nodded from across the room, already aligned. It doesn't mean anything's wrong with you, she added quickly. Just support. Support. Another word repurposed. I agreed. Of course I did. Agreement was my last remaining function. In the therapist's office, I described the distance, the confusion, the sense that I was slowly being edged out of my own life. She listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. "Do you think it's possible you're projecting some insecurity onto their closeness?" Their closeness. I nodded, because nodding kept things moving. Because doubt, once introduced, is contagious. At home, things improved, on the surface. He was kinder, more attentive. My sister gave me space, just enough to look generous. Dinners were calmer, laughter redistributed. But now I saw the system clearly. Every kindness was corrective. Every silence strategic. And in the middle of it all, there was a new truth I couldn't escape. The alliance was no longer implicit. It was operational. I wasn't married to a man anymore. I was negotiating with a unit. The day my sister suggested I take a few days away, I understood how complete the shift had become. "It might be good for you," she said carefully. "Just some space to reset." My husband didn't look surprised. He looked relieved. "I can take care of things here," he added. "You've been carrying a lot." Carrying. As if I were the burden. I said yes before I'd finished processing the question. Saying yes was reflex by then. Agreement had become my way of staying present in a life that no longer felt like mine. I packed a small bag, nothing dramatic, just enough to make it look temporary. At the door, my sister hugged me, longer than necessary. "You know this doesn't change anything," she whispered. "We just want everyone to be okay." There it was again, the phrase. Soft, final. At the hotel, I didn't sleep. I replayed conversations, glances, moments I'd dismissed as harmless. Each one clicked into place with quiet precision. What I'd called coincidence was coordination. What I'd called support was alignment. By morning, my phone was full of updates I hadn't asked for. Groceries handled. He fixed the sink. We ordered your favorite takeout. I went home early. The house smelled different. Familiar, but altered. Like someone had rearranged furniture in the dark. My coat hook was occupied, my shoes pushed aside. On the counter sat the mug, the clean one, still warm. They were in the living room when I walked in, sitting close, not touching. They looked up together. "Oh," my sister said, "you're back already?" My husband stood too fast. "We didn't think you'd—" "I know," I said. And for the first time, my voice didn't bend. "You didn't think I'd notice?" Silence stretched, not defensive, calculating. "I didn't want this to turn ugly," he said finally. "I just wanted everyone to be okay." I laughed then. A short, quiet sound that surprised all of us. "That's the problem," I said. "You decided who everyone was." No one followed me when I went upstairs. They didn't have to. Because in that moment I realized something that left me cold and clear. I wasn't being pushed out anymore. I had already been replaced. And the only question left was whether I would keep pretending this was accidental, or finally say the thing they'd built an entire system to avoid. After that night, the house treated me like a guest who'd overstayed. Not openly, not cruelly, just efficiently. They adjusted without asking, moved forward without resistance. My husband started sleeping on the far edge of the bed, then not in it at all. My sister stayed late, then overnight, then stopped pretending it was temporary. No announcements were made, no decisions explained. That was the cruelty of it. Nothing I could point to, nothing that would justify anger without making me look unstable. At breakfast, they spoke in logistics. "I'll take care of that." She already knows. We talked about it. Always we. When I spoke, They listened with patience that felt rehearsed, the kind you use with someone emotional, someone difficult. I tried once more to force clarity. "Are you in love with her?" I asked him quietly one evening when she was in the shower. He didn't answer right away. He rubbed his face, exhausted by the inconvenience of honesty. "It's not like that," he said. "You're oversimplifying." Oversimplifying. Another word for naming. "She understands me," he continued. "She doesn't escalate things. She keeps things calm." Calm, the value system revealed. When she came back into the room, towel around her shoulders, she didn't look surprised to see my expression. She looked prepared. "No one wanted to hurt you," she said gently. "We were trying to protect what we have." "What you have," I corrected. She tilted her head, almost sad. "You don't have to make this a betrayal," she said. "It doesn't have to be that dramatic." That was when I understood the final rule of the house. Pain was acceptable. Naming it was not. That night I packed again, this time properly. As I zipped the bag, I noticed the mug on the dresser, the clean one. I picked it up, turned it slowly in my hands. For the first time, I didn't put it back. Downstairs they stood together, waiting, aligned, calm. "I just want everyone to be okay," my husband said one last time. I looked at them both. And for the first time since this began, I didn't argue. I left. Because the truth had finally surfaced, clear and unavoidable. They hadn't crossed a line. They had replaced me and called it peace. The realization didn't come all at once. It settled slowly, like sediment after a storm. 3 days after I left, my sister called. Her voice was careful, neutral, already shaped for the version of events she wanted to preserve. "He's not doing well," she said. "He keeps saying he didn't want this to end the way it did." I almost laughed. "What way was that?" I asked. A pause. "Just long enough." "You know, like this," she said. "So final. Final. As if I'd slammed a door instead of stepping away from a room where I no longer existed." That night, alone in the small apartment I'd rushed into, I unpacked slowly. Not because I was tired, but because I wanted to see what I'd chosen to bring with me. Clothes, documents, the essentials, and the mug, the clean one. I don't know why I'd taken it. Habit, maybe, or instinct. It sat on the counter now, absurdly out of place. I turned it in my hands and felt something catch under my thumb. A hairline crack, almost invisible, starting at the rim. I remembered then, clearly, painfully, the first time I'd seen it. Months ago, late evening. I'd reached for a glass and found the mug already on the table, steaming. I'd picked it up, noticed the crack, and put it back without thinking. That night, my sister had been staying over. I checked my phone. Old messages, old photos. Tiny fragments I'd never connected. A picture she'd sent me once. Cozy night in. The mug just barely visible in the background. The crack facing outward. Another memory surfaced, her voice, months earlier, calming me after a fight with him. "You know," she'd said softly, "he just wants everyone to be okay." The same words, the same cadence. It wasn't coincidence, it was rehearsal. They hadn't just shared time, they'd shared language, they'd shared justification. The crack in the mug wasn't from carelessness. It was from pressure. Too much heat applied too often while pretending nothing was happening. My phone buzzed again. A text, this time, from him. "I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted everyone to be okay." I stared at the screen, the mug heavy in my hand. And in that moment the truth landed, not sharp, not explosive, but devastatingly clear. They didn't betray me in secret. They betrayed me out loud for months. They just chose words that made it sound like kindness. In the end, nothing dramatic happened. No confrontation, no confession. No moment where someone finally said the forbidden word out loud. That was the final cruelty. Weeks passed. The story they told settled into place without effort. He was heartbroken. She was helping. I was overwhelmed and needed space. People nodded when they heard it. The language was gentle, responsible, impossible to argue with. I didn't correct anyone because I finally understood the cost of speaking. If I said what happened, I would sound unstable, emotional, vindictive. If I named the betrayal, I would be accused of exaggeration, of projecting, of destroying the family over something that was never proven. They had built the perfect defense. Not lies, but reasonable explanations. I saw him once more, months later, to finalize paperwork. He looked thinner, older, still calm. "I hope you're doing better," he said. "I really wanted this to end peacefully." There it was, one last time. "I know," I replied. And for the first time, it was true. Because peace, I learned, is not the absence of harm, it's the absence of resistance. They had peace because I stopped trying to be understood. I left the meeting and walked home alone. On my kitchen counter sat the mug, the clean one. The crack had spread slightly since the last time I'd looked at it. Not shattered, just permanently altered. That's how it works. No explosion, no single moment you can point to, just pressure. Applied carefully. By people who keep saying they mean well. The paradox is this. They believed they were protecting everyone. And I let them, until I realized that everyone never included me. So I did the only thing that broke the system. I left without demanding acknowledgement, without asking for guilt, without giving them a villain to point to. And in doing so, I took something they never expected to lose, their certainty. Because now, no matter how calm things look, there will always be a crack they can't explain. And they will know, even if they never say it out loud, that peace built on silence is just another form of violence.